Chapter 616. Mountain River, Yellow Sand. Evil Spirit Sect was not the only sect that reacted this way. At that moment, on Eastern Wastelands, Evil Dust Sect and Evil Lust Sect also acted in this manner. They, too, spread out their presences as outsiders and had it move the sky. It was as if they were afraid that the Berserker's sacred vessel might not detect them. As their presences caused the clouds and wind in the sky to move, the weather in the entire Eastern Wastelands changed, and thunder rumbled loudly in the world. As the world changed, Evil Immortal Sect, which was the core of the entire Evil Sect and was located to the east of Eastern Wastelands, also had numerous powerful presences surge into the sky. What is the Evil Sect? When all the others in all directions cower before the Berserker's disaster, only we of Evil Sect will stand and fight against it courageously. Now, we will let all of those around us see what they do not dare do. We of the Evil Sect will not only do it, we will also stand against it. We are already here in the land of the Berserkers, so why should we be afraid of that Berserker's disaster and hide from it? If that's the case, it'd have been better not to have come in the first place. A ghastly voice spread out from Evil Immortal Sect and reverberated in the area, turning into a thunderous rumble that spread through all the evil sects within Eastern Wastelands. The other 4 locations of the continent were a huge contrast to the east of Eastern Wastelands. It did not matter whether it was the Great Leaf Immortal Sect where Di Qian was or the other immortal sects, all of them did not dare reveal their presences. It was clear that they wanted to avoid this particular day that came once every 50 years until the Berserker's sacred vessel fell asleep once again. Perhaps their choice was correct and Evil Sect's actions were mad, but this alone was enough to show just how different their beliefs were. One of them would fight against the Berserker's disaster head-on, and the others would watch it with ghastly eyes, and after they avoided it, they would show their fangs. Just like a fierce tiger and a pack of wolves. When a fierce tiger ran into an enemy, it would usually lunge on that enemy with all its strength and would rarely retreat. However, when a pack of wolves ran into an enemy, they would usually linger around in the area, and even their occasional attacks would be filled with dark, sinister intentions. Almost at the same time the 4 evil sects released their presences, a sudden, loud sound that shook the sky and earth suddenly rang out, and a gigantic crack swiftly tore through the sky. It was as if there was a sharp edge residing in the sky that could tear through everything. That sharp edge cut open the sky, revealing a huge crack that was 100-something feet long. When anyone lifted their heads, the crack above would remind them of a scar which wanted to rip open the sky completely. A great, mighty pressure descended with a loud rumble from the crack to the land. That pressure swept through the continent and covered the entire Eastern Wastelands in an instant. Su Ming's eyes flew open. He lifted his head and looked at the crack in the sky. He could sense the pressure's existence and even its strength. It had already surpassed the might of South Morning's sacred vessel, the halberd. But Su Ming did not feel too much fear towards this pressure, because his entire body was that of a true berserker. However, Bao Qiu was different. She was trembling by his side and her face instantly turned pale. She did not belong to the land of the berserkers, she was an outsider. At that moment, as she felt the pressure spreading out from the crack in the sky, her heart instantly started trembling. A huge wave of terror rose within her, and she could do nothing about it. It was as if a mountain that should never have crumbled had just shattered, and it was collapsing right on top of her. She could not put up too much of a fight under this pressure, as if everything had been predestined. She was fated to be crushed to death by Eastern Wasteland's sacred vessel. It had only just showed the beginnings of its might, and it's already so powerful. But the evil sect members who have descended in this place must have a way to resist this pressure, or else they would have died much earlier when this sacred vessel first descended. That Jian from Evil Sect won't be asking the others from Evil Sect to go through this trial either. Su Ming's face remained as calm as ever. He did not help Bao Qiu just yet. The woman right now was swiftly forming seals with her hands, as she trembled. Gradually, a holy light spread through her body. Su Ming stopped meditating and stood up. The power of the world in this place had started becoming chaotic due to the changes outside, and it was no longer suitable for training purposes. Once Su Ming stood up, he walked to the window and lifted his head to look at the sky. He narrowed his eyes. He could vaguely sense that once the crack in the sky appeared, the spiritual aura in the entire mountain started flowing backwards, inside it, as if it was being absorbed. The mountain was not the only one affected. More accurately speaking, the entire eastern wastelands was affected. An endless amount of spiritual aura was charging towards the sky like invisible, surging clouds. They were devoured by that crack, as if the berserker's sacred vessel needed this vast amount of spiritual aura to rouse from its sleep. Su Ming stood still and watched silently. Bao Qiu was still trembling as she sat behind him, and it was obvious that she was resisting against that might with everything she had. Time slowly passed, and the power of that pressure grew stronger. In the end, it became so strong that it almost felt like it had gained corporeal form, causing the sky to be distorted in Su Ming's eyes. It also became indistinct for a brief instant. Suddenly, a sound that reminded people of something having struck another thing, which might have been gold, rang out clearly and echoed for a long time. It spread through the whole eastern wastelands. It was difficult for anyone to determine swiftly what sort of sound that was. Almost the moment it reverberated in the air, Bao Qiu's body froze, and blood flowed out from the corners of her mouth. Her face turned even paler, and as she moved her hands, she quickly tapped a few parts of her body in succession. Only then did she manage to stabilize her cultivation base, which had been thrown in chaos due to that sound. The entire evil spirit sect was in a state of dead silence at that moment. When the sound rang out, many of the berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance coughed up blood, and some of them even fell unconscious while trembling. Only the pure-blood immortals who had descended into this land gritted their teeth and persevered, resisting in different manners according to the different levels of cultivation they had. Shun Dong, the middle-aged Grand Sect elder in that blue long robe meditating in the black smoke at the top of Evil Spirit Mountain, remained as calm as ever. There was not a hint of change in his expression. It was as if that sound that made many people's hearts tremble was nothing special to him. Similar events were happening in all 4 evil sects in Eastern Wastelands. All the immortals who had descended in the land and all the berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance resisted the pressure. Perhaps the latter ones had done so to survive, perhaps they were pursuing strength, or perhaps they had done so for other reasons. But in the end, they had changed their blood inheritance so that they could practice evil sect's arts, and the price they had to pay for this was also incredibly huge. The price was that they no longer had the right to call themselves berserkers, and even in evil sect, they were degraded to secondary humans. But the price was especially great during the berserkers' disaster that would appear once every 50 years. The pressure they had to suffer was far greater than the one felt by those who had descended to the land of berserkers. It was as if the berserkers' sacred vessel harbored incredible hatred towards these sort of people. Every single time the berserkers' disaster arrived, a large amount of these half-berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance would die because of it. Besides evil sect, the striking sound also spread through the entire Eastern Wastelands and into the other immortal sects. However, due to them hiding themselves, they did not suffer too much damage. Nonetheless, the impact of that sound to their hearts had caused their impression towards the mysteries and magnificence of the berserkers to increase every 50 years. Mumbling could be heard in the sects that were not fighting against the pressure like evil sect. All of these voices belonged to women, and as they spread out in those indistinct mumbles, a layer of blood-red light covered those sects. These blood-red screens of light looked would cover the berserker's sky, making it difficult for the berserker's sacred vessel in the sky to search for traces of immortals. The blood-red screen was a necessary item for all the immortal sects that had descended to the land of the berserkers. This was the celestial maiden's divine ability, and also their function. 8 women in white could be seen within those sects that had descended. All of these women were incredibly beautiful, without exception. At that moment, all of them had closed their eyes and spread out their arms wide open. Before each one was a small red bottle, and within them were drops of extremely valuable blood. The entire reason behind why they could cover the berserker's sky was this blood. Celestial maidens were the only ones that could bring out some of the power within that blood and cover the sky. They were the only ones who could do this, no one else. There was also a celestial maiden in evil sect, but she was not tasked to cover the berserker's sky. Instead, she had another purpose due to Jian's request. At that moment, as that sound in the sky faded away, the second strike followed soon after. It spread out with a loud bang, and it sounded as if it was incredibly close to the ground. Waves of dark light were spreading out from the crack in the sky, and as it shone, it was as if there was something that was slowly revealing itself from inside. The second bell chime caused the immortals who had descended from evil sect to tremble even more. As Bao Qiu formed a seal with her hands, she pointed forward, and immediately, an illusion appeared before her. It was a statue, and it was the exact same one as the one on the ground floor. Once the statue appeared, Bao Qiu's face gained a little color and she looked a little better, but almost in an instant, the third, fourth, and fifth bell chimes traveled forth from the sky, with loud, rumbling sounds. At the instant they reverberated through the air, the dark light from the huge crack in the sky became much stronger and illuminated the ground, causing the entire sky to look as if it had been enveloped by that light. The crack and the blue light could no longer be seen due to it. The only thing that could be glimpsed was a circular-shaped thing slowly descending from the sky under that layer of dark light. That was a monstrously huge bell. It might seem round, but that was just the edge of the bell. As it descended and Su Ming saw its full form, a loud hum started in his head. He took a step forward, and if he had not instinctively controlled himself, he would have walked out of the tower. Han Mountain Bell. Su Ming widened his eyes, and disbelief could be seen on his face. His breathing quickened in an instant. The Berserker's sacred vessel in the sky was incredibly similar to Han Mountain Bell. However, there were also differences between them, and it was that the picture of the nine-headed dragon was absent from the Berserker's sacred vessel in the sky. Instead, it had an endless mountain river covering half of the bell, and the other half was a desert of golden sand. Chapter 617. Living Through the Disaster. Great Eastern Wasteland Desert Bell. This is Eastern Wasteland's sacred vessel, your people's vessel. Bao Qiu's hoarse voice reached Su Ming's ears from behind in bits and pieces. Her voice was incredibly weak. The illusory statue before her was also trembling faintly at the moment, as if the bell's appearance had brought such a pressure on it that it would crumble at any moment. Su Ming's breathing quickened slightly, and he only managed to calm it down after some time. He had his gaze trained on the huge Eastern Wasteland's bell in the sky, and his eyes were burning with a strong flame. He finally knew just what it was, that sound that seemed as if something had struck another thing that might be gold. That was a bell chime that came from the bell in the crack, but due to the crack cutting off its sound and the spiritual aura from the world surging into the crack continuously, the bell chime sounded as if it had changed. But once he thought about it, that sound was clearly a bell chime. Almost at the moment Eastern Wasteland's bell descended from the sky, 8 women dressed in white appeared within each of the evil sects in Eastern Wastelands. It was the same for Evil Spirit Sect. 8 women dressed in white floated into the sky, and judging by their expressions, they seemed to not be too affected by the pressure created by Eastern Wasteland's bell. These 8 women were all incredibly beautiful, and there was an indescribable presence surrounding them at the moment. They were floating in the sky, and all of them had a small red bottle before them. A drop of fresh blood swiftly flew out from each of the 8 bottles, and these 8 drops imprinted themselves on the center of these women's brows. It looked as though someone had painted a vermilion mark between their brows. At the instant that happened, the 8 women closed their eyes, and a piercing blood-red light burst forth from their bodies. Their white robes seemed to have been dyed in blood under that light. As it filled the air, it completely enveloped Evil Spirit Mountain, but it was not used to cover the Berserker's sky and stop the Eastern Wasteland bell from detecting the presences of the immortals who had descended here. The red light was instead used to allow the sacred vessel to use its power on these people based on their different levels of cultivation and their limits. It could be said that the blood-red light was a filter. Each time it changed, it would hide away all the other people's presences and only reveal one person's, so that he or she would be able to have a chance to resist the might of Han Mountain Bell alone. That blood-red light could also change all the presences of those who had revealed their power within it, causing them to be weaker than their true level of cultivation. With this method, the people could go through what could only be considered as a true trial. Because the divine ability of Eastern Wasteland's bells would release its power based on the different levels of cultivation it detected. It would not waste even a single bit of its power, neither would it release less than what it required. Yet even so, this Eastern Wasteland's bell was definitely not an ordinary treasure. This was the sacred vessel left behind by the first god of Berserkers in Eastern Wastelands, the priceless treasure used to protect the Berserkers. It had with it a strike that possessed the power to destroy everything. It did not matter what level of cultivation its enemy possessed, it would bring forth a power that was the exact same as its enemy's level of cultivation. But if its enemy was in a particular level of cultivation, then the bell would show the strongest amount of power possible within that stage, and it would be so great that it could destroy all those within that same stage. Yet even though Evil Sect had already made such preparations and the Berserker's disaster would fall on them once every 50 years, there would still be some who would die under Eastern Wasteland's bell. This sort of indirect control over Eastern Wasteland's bell and change towards the function of the Celestial Maidens was created by Xian, the strongest in Evil Sect. This method might be crazy and dangerous, but it could make all those within Evil Sect to not want to waste even a single moment of their time and train in a frenzy so that they could fight against the other immortal sects, because they could use enchanted treasures when they fought against the Berserker's disaster. The blood-red screen of light that had been altered by Xian spread out over all 4 evil sects at that instant, and immediately the first person was chosen to go through the trial from the Berserker's disaster, and he was the strongest person in the sect, the Grand Sect Elder Shandong. Su Ming stared at the blood-red screen of light with bright, sparkling eyes. He was looking at the 8 women and the blood-red bottles before them. In the midst of his silence, a hint of complicated feelings could be seen on his face. He remembered the dazed celestial maiden that was residing in his storage bag at that moment. A cold harumph came from the top of Evil Spirit Mountain. Bao Qiu finally relaxed under the blood-red screen of light, as if all pressure on her had disappeared, but her expression turned even graver, and a deep anxiety could be detected in her bearing. With a pale face, she looked towards Su Ming's back. She knew that the true trial was about to start. The blood-red screen of light caused the person who let out that cold harumph to be the only person who had his presence revealed. A strong, mighty power erupted forth swiftly at that instant, and it was a wave of power that could shake the sky and earth. It caused Su Ming's pupils to shrink, and he lifted his head to look towards that direction. He saw that black smoke rising into the sky. At that moment, it turned into a gigantic shadow. It was about 10,000 feet tall, and its entire body was a little indistinct, as if it would scatter away if wind blew on it. But the truth was that no matter how strong the wind, it would not be able to blow apart that shadow. This was, of course, unless it was a gust of wind brought forth by someone with a level of cultivation that surpassed those who had reached great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm or were above the immortals who had reached ascendance. The shadow seemed like a man, but due to its indistinct appearance, its face could not be seen clearly. However, the presence spreading out from that shadow caused Su Ming's pupils to shrink. The feeling he gained from this person's level of cultivation was similar to the one when he faced off against Sai Ma Xin after he had inherited the legacy from the second god of Berserkers and had mastered his numerous divine abilities. Right at that moment, the illusory shadow seeped through the blood-red screen of light, and at the instant he revealed itself in the world, the Eastern Wasteland's bell let out a deafening chime in the sky. That bell did not even cast any sort of divine ability as that chime echoed in the air. It only used its gigantic body and pressed down on the ground. The bell descended 10 feet, and as it sank, a wave that looked like ripples spread out throughout the land. The ground let out a loud bang, and even Evil Spirit Mountain trembled because of it. A large amount of crushed stones fell from the mountain, and cracks appeared on the ground that started spreading rapidly in all directions. At the same time, the huge, indistinct figure lifted its arms, as if it wanted to push against the sky so that it could hold up the pressure and resist the power of Eastern Wasteland's bell. A low roar reverberated in the air, and it sounded as if someone had been holding onto their breath for a long time before finally letting it out. As that sound spread out like the muffled roars of thunder, the indistinct figure looked as if it could no longer bear with the pressure. Its arms exploded with a bang, as if they could no longer handle the pressure, and right before Su Ming's eyes, its body shattered completely like a broken bottle as that roar continued echoing in the air. However, as it broke down, another person could be seen within the crumbling black shadow. It was a middle-aged man dressed in a blue robe with rather long hair. There was an eerie glint in the man's eyes as he shouted at the sky. Is this the limit of the power for late ascendant stage? It's still not enough to destroy me. The middle-aged man was naturally Shandong. As he spoke, he flew up and charged towards the bell. His at the equivalent of great completion of the Berserker Soul Realm, the great circle of the Immortal's ascendant stage. Su Ming's eyes sparkled as these thoughts echoed in his heart while he looked at Shandong's figure. But the presence he showed is not that of a person who has reached the great circle. It's instead at a level below that. He's just showing the power for late ascendant stage. This should be related to the celestial maiden's screen of light. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. He could already guess the method evil sect used to resist the Berserker's disaster, and from this, he could also guess that the bell was displaying the limit of the power for a single stage. As he sank into his thoughts, he lifted his head and watched with sparkling eyes as Shandong got increasingly closer to Eastern Wasteland's bell in the sky. At the instant he was about to close in on it, a wave of ripples appeared from the sacred vessel, and that wave turned into an illusory river flowing down a mountain. At first glance, that river and mountain still were clearly illusions, but they quickly gained physical form, so it soon looked as if there was a river and a mountain in the sky. The mountain and river were, naturally, the things carved on the bell, and its original form was 9 mountains, 9 rivers, and 9 deserts. At that moment, what had appeared in midair was a mountain and a river, but no desert. At the instant the mountain and river appeared, Su Ming immediately saw Shandong's expression turning incredibly grave. When the river descended, it looked as if it had turned into a long dragon. Sweeping down, it charged towards Shandong. At the same time, the mountain let out a loud bang and warped above Shandong, crushing down on him. This might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, only the span of a few breaths had passed since the mountain and river appeared. As rumbling sounds reverberated in the air, the mountain and river disappeared, and Shandong coughed up a large mouthful of blood, but he retreated with a loud laugh. The 8 celestial maidens changed their footsteps, and the blood-red screen of light over Evil Spirit Sect immediately changed and covered Shandong's presence before revealing the wave of power from another person. The appearance of the Berserker's disaster in Eastern Wastelands on different individuals made Su Ming see the immortals and the Berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance appear one by one, as the blood-red screen of light changed each time. The people revealed would either make it through the attack successfully, or die in the process. Shrill screams of pain echoed in the air. "This is the 9th person," Bao Qiu said from behind Su Ming. With a pale face, she looked at the sky outside the window. Su Ming did not speak. Sorrow gradually appeared on his face. He was not sad for the immortals who descended to this land or the Berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance. He was sad for the persistence of Eastern Wasteland's sacred vessel, which had not changed since ancient times. Even if that persistence was being used by evil sect in this time and age for it to become the Berserker's disaster that served as a trial for the people in its sect, it still did not change. Su Ming watched Eastern Wasteland's bell trying to kill all the outsiders, who had revealed themselves by spreading the presence of their cultivation base, and bringing its might on them to fulfill its mission on this day that would only come once every 50 years. He saw its persistence, despite knowing that it would be increasingly more difficult as time passed. Su Ming closed his eyes. Soon after, a cold chill suddenly surrounded the building where he was. At the same time, the Berserker's disaster for Bao Qiu arrived. A powerful pressure swiftly descended on the building and landed on Bao Qiu's body. She shivered and gritted her teeth to resist it. Su Ming still stood with his eyes closed. Chapter 618, Obtaining the Seal. Would I have the right to become its master? This thought appeared in Su Ming's heart. Eastern Wasteland's bell. It was the Berserker's sacred vessel, and was also the treasure left behind by the first god of Berserkers as a blessing for his descendants, one used as an item to intimidate all outsiders. It was the treasure that made even Di Qian, who had sent 2 of his clones to the place, and Jian from Evil Sect, to only be able to change the laws governing the treasure's descent, not daring to destroy it. Perhaps they could not even destroy it. That one mountain and river is equivalent to the limit of a berserker in the later stage of the berserker soul realm. If it would bring out all 9 mountains, rivers, and deserts, then what level of cultivation would the wave of power that would erupt forth show? Su Ming opened his eyes. Bao Qiu was trembling behind him. There was struggle on her face, and the seals on her hands were continuously changing, as she was gritting her teeth tightly. She did not ask for Su Ming to take action. As the blood-red screen of light completely exposed the building, Bao Qiu's presence and power as an outsider showed up clearly under Eastern Wasteland's bell. Her wave of power was between the immortal's soul transformation and soul formation. At that moment, as the waves of her power were revealed, Eastern Wasteland's bell descended on her swiftly. The entire building shook. The illusory shadow of the female statue before Bao Qiu immediately crumbled and exploded into pieces. She coughed up a mouthful of blood, and as her face turned pale, she looked as if she was being flattened and would shatter at any moment. Eastern Wasteland's bell descended another 5 feet, and it was like a great, heavy force suddenly appearing on a drowning person, as if it wanted to drag him into the depths of the water. It caused despair to appear in Bao Qiu's eyes. As Eastern Wasteland's bell descended, the faint, illusory shadow of a bell could be seen falling on the young woman. At that moment, it had already landed on the building. It seeped through the walls, and began fulfilling its mission to kill all outsiders. Su Ming sighed softly and turned around. At the instant the illusory bell seeped through the building and descended on Bao Qiu's jugular notch, he took a step forward. Right at that moment, he lifted his right hand to gently lift the incoming illusory bell that was descending on her. With it, a shudder racked Su Ming's entire body, but his expression remained as calm as ever. The illusory bell no longer sank down and remained on his right hand. It was forcefully stopped in its tracks. Almost at the instant Su Ming's right hand touched the illusory bell, Eastern Wasteland's bell let out a long bell chime in the sky. At the same time, a powerful will instantly descended on Su Ming's heart. The will did not speak, but instead exuded a cold and ancient air. Once it scanned Su Ming's body, it returned to the sky, back to where Eastern Wasteland's bell was. Soon after, an even greater pressure descended once again, as if it wanted to move past Su Ming and crush Bao Qiu to her death. A mountain appeared in the sky up ahead. That mountain was 100,000 feet tall and towered in the clouds despite being a mere illusion. At the instant it appeared, all those who were watching an evil spirit sect immediately sported changes to their expressions. Shendong's eyes also shone with a glint. Up to now, only Shendong alone had been able to make a mountain and river show up on from the Eastern Wasteland's bell during the Berserker's disaster. All of the others did not have the right for the bell to react this way, because the pressure as it descended alone was enough to kill them. Bao Qiu. Shendong mumbled softly. The mountain occupied almost half the sky once it appeared. It was green, and as a large amount of life force filled the area, it swiftly descended on the building that protruded from the blood-red screen of light. Bao Qiu was beside Su Ming, and at that moment, she widened her eyes. She could sense the power of that mountain in the sky. This was something she had never expected to see, a mountain manifesting when she went through the Berserker's disaster. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He suddenly realized that his previous train of thought had been wrong. Once the Eastern Wasteland's bell retrieved its will from his body and the mountain manifested in the air, he found that it was not aimed towards Bao Qiu, but towards him. A faint smile appeared on Su Ming's face. Once he understood this, he looked at the descending illusory mountain once again, and he could tell with just one glance that it did not harbor true killing intent towards him. It would be difficult for anyone else to discover this, unless they were directly involved in this like Su Ming and had the exact same analysis and judgments as he did. Everyone else, they would only see the Berserker's disaster descending on the building. You, who do not harbor any killing intent towards me, what is with the mountain that appeared because of me and now it descending towards me? If you're not intending to wipe away my existence, then you must surely be a trial. Su Ming's eyes flashed, and at the same time, the smile on his face grew, for within his eyes was a hint of respect. Contrary to other people's feelings towards Eastern Wasteland's bell, he had been sad because of what he saw and respected the sacred vessel's persistence, due to his familiarity with Han Mountain Bell. Even if it was only a treasure, Su Ming still respected it. As the power of that one mountain descended, Su Ming lifted his right hand. He swept his thumb across his index finger, and a thin wound immediately appeared, blood flowing out of it to dye Su Ming's right index finger red. When he lifted his head, he could sense that the power of that one mountain was getting closer, and Bao Qiu was shivering even more violently. At that moment, he pressed his bloody index finger on Bao Qiu's fair forehead. He left a mark of blood at the center of her brows. It was like a symbol. At the instant he smeared the blood on her forehead, Bao Qiu was left completely stunned, because she realized that when the blood appeared on her forehead, she could no longer feel any sort of pressure on her. It was as if she had been placed outside the pressure, as if she had been overlooked by Eastern Wasteland's bell, let off by the Berserker's disaster. This scene caused Bao Qiu's heart to race. With shock in her heart, she looked towards Su Ming. She had a dumbfounded expression on her face, and there was a huge storm raging in her heart. The various questions that rose within her caused her breathing to instantly quicken. It was difficult for her to understand how Su Ming could make the berserker's disaster let her go by just smearing his blood at the center of her brows. She could also not understand how he did it. Just who was he? What level of cultivation did he have? Where did he come from? And what sort of connection did he have with that Eastern Wasteland's bell? She could already guess that there was some sort of huge secret contained within this, though she was uncertain as to what that secret was. Then, as if she remembered something, her eyes went wide and she stared at Su Ming blankly. Disbelief and dazed confusion appeared on her face. A loud bang reverberated in the world. As all the people from Evil Spirit Sect watched, the mountain that appeared seeped through the double-story building and descended within. Everyone, including Shandong, did not think that there might be another person in Bao Qiu's house. To them, Bao Qiu was the one fighting against the power of the manifested mountain at that moment. Su Ming swiftly lifted his right hand, as his long hair danced in the air and his robes fluttered. He looked at the illusory shadow of the green mountain with a fixed stare as it came charging towards him as if it wanted to crush his soul, and the moment it came close, he pushed his hand swiftly up. A muffled bang reverberated in the air once he pushed against the mountain. That bang spread out like a ripple and echoed through the entire Evil Spirit Mountain, but that sound could not be heard with human ears. It could only be sensed with the soul. It was a sound only for the soul. All those who heard that it would be dazed for different amounts of time, even Shandong. That sound echoed in their heads and refused to leave even after a long period of time has passed. At that moment, Bao Qiu saw something, and it would become something she would never forget. It would even be carved into her soul to become an eternal memory. She saw Su Ming smiling. At the instant he touched the illusory mountain with his right hand, another illusory item appeared around him, and that was another bell. It manifested around Su Ming and enveloped him completely. She could see a faint figure of a nine-headed beast on the illusory bell. The pictures of mountains, rivers, and deserts might not be carved there, but the bell around Su Ming caused Bao Qiu shock once she saw it. She even had a feeling as if she saw the Eastern Wasteland's bell itself. The sound that could only be heard with the soul and would cause others to be dazed had spread out after the power from the mountain clashed with this illusory bell. Bai Qiu bit her bottom lip when she saw no form of killing intent or pressure bursting forth when that power from the mountain crashed into the illusory bell around Su Ming. Instead, that power dissipated as if it had melted, and then it surged into the illusory bell around the teenage boy. When the power of the mountain completely dissipated and fused into Han Mountain Bell, a mountain that towered in the clouds appeared on the surface of Su Ming's bell besides the nine-headed dragon. Thine appearance befits the laws left by mine master, Xianxia. When the outsiders occupy our land of the berserkers, I shalt bring down the Eastern Wasteland's tower. It has 99 layers, and if anyone reaches the top, he shalt be my new master. He shalt also receive Xianxia's epiphany towards all worlds, and the person shalt understand life. Thine power is not enough to withstand my power. I shalt grant thee the seal of one mountain, and with it, thou shalt obtain the right to enter Eastern Wasteland's tower, and activate the blood trail path. Thou art the first to obtain the seal of the mountain. When Eastern Wasteland's tower appeareth, 26 others shalt receive the right to enter after you in succession. A cold and ancient voice echoed in Su Ming's head. When it spoke, a focused look swiftly appeared in Su Ming's eyes. After a moment, the voice disappeared, and as the blood-red screen of light changed, the double-story building was instantly concealed within it. The one that was exposed outside was another person from Evil Spirit Sect who was using this berserker's disaster to train. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. Even though the voice in his head vanished, but the meaning behind its words was enough for him to mull over for some time. Eastern Wasteland's tower. By the looks of it, this tower will only be allowed to descend once certain requirements are fulfilled. Besides the outsiders occupying the land of the berserkers, the other requirement is for me to appear. Xianxia. A pensive look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Bao Qiu was staring at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression at that moment, and respect gradually appeared on her face. It did not matter whether it was born from the master-servant connection linking her to him or due to other reasons, all races would always respect the strong. That was an eternal law that would never change in all worlds no matter how they had developed. Thank you, Master. Bao Qiu got up, then wrapped her fist in her palm and bowed toward Su Ming. Chapter 619. Vicious. Su Ming was immersed in his thoughts, and he did not pay any attention to Bao Qiu. After some time, she straightened up and meekly stood by the side. Occasionally, her gaze would land on Su Ming, and gradually, a hint of curiosity and complication appeared on her face. She had never expected to meet this person here. In truth, at the moment the Berserker's disaster disappeared from her when Su Ming smeared that drop of blood at the center of her brows, she had been shocked, but at the same time, she recalled someone. She had absolutely not expected that they would meet in such a manner, and he would become her master. Time trickled by. The area outside the tower was silent, but the pressure and the bell chimes continued outside. When the sky gradually turned dark and midnight eventually arrived, more than 30 people had died under that Berserker's disaster in Evil Spirit sect. Most of these people were Berserkers who had changed their blood inheritance. These people had betrayed the Berserkers and their ancestors for all sorts of reasons by changing their blood inheritance to practice evil arts. Eastern Wasteland's bell did not just appear above Evil Spirit sect on that day. Its body had remained above Evil Lust sect, Evil Dust sect, and Evil Immortal sect as well. In fact, the bell had also descended on some of the immortals who did not belong to any of the sects in the land who had accidentally revealed their power on the ground. They were then killed by the Eastern Wasteland's bell that appeared right above them at the moment they revealed their presence. When midnight was about to arrive and there were no longer any immortals who had to go through the Berserker's disaster in Evil Spirit sect, the blood-red screen of light covered the entire place, as if it had shrouded the Eastern Wasteland's bell's eyes so that it could not see the waves of power from the outsiders, causing it to only be able to slowly fade away during the last moments of that one day. Now it could only wait for another 50 years, to appear once again. As time passed, a brilliant glare slowly appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He took a few steps forward, to move beside the window, and watched the dark sky outside to wait for a scene that might appear once dawn was over. Based on what that voice said, this Eastern Wasteland's tower. While Su Ming was in deep thought, dawn arrived. On that day, the dawn was a scene that was incredibly difficult for all of those in Eastern Wastelands to forget. It would forever be carved into their memories, and they would never be able to chase it away. The immortal sects as well as those from the evil sect which had descended on Eastern Wastelands had been waiting for one thing for a long time, but it had never appeared. But on that day, it arrived. Jian from evil sect had used a large amount of his power without holding back to change the laws governing the descent of Eastern Wasteland's bell because he was also hoping for this one thing to arrive. However, no one knew just what sort of requirement was needed for that one thing they desired to show up. All the immortal sects as well as Di Qian's clone knew that one of the requirements for that thing to appear was that there must be enough outsiders in the land of Berserkers. However, as years went by and as more outsiders landed on Eastern Wastelands, the thing they desired still did not appear. Because of that, they reached a unanimous, unplanned agreement, and all of them executed a wide-scale plan that required them to use up a large amount of their power and divine abilities, and had even made them give up an unimaginable price, to make Eastern Wastelands ram into South Morning. Since they had no idea how to make that thing appear, they could only fumble around for clues and try out everything that might possibly be the other requirement and hopefully fulfill it. The crash between Eastern Wastelands and South Morning might be a unanimous but unplanned idea, yet Evil Sect and all the other immortal sets had also used their own methods to search for the best in divination and had them predict the requirement for that thing's appearance. It was the reason behind the catastrophe of the Eastern Wastelands. Because while the predicted results Evil Sect and all the other immortal sects gained were different, the meaning between them was incredibly similar. The crash between two continents would bring forth the key for the appearance of that thing. But no one knew what that key was. However, no matter what, the first Berserker's disaster post-crash was the critical moment to check whether this key had truly appeared, and if it truly happened, then it would mean that the Immortals' prediction was a success. If it did not happen, then they would continue trying other methods, and that thing would surely appear eventually. Because the key might have appeared in this Berserker's disaster to bring forth that thing, that was why all the immortal sects that had descended to this place used everything in their disposal and even the power of their sects to have their best prodigies descend in the land of the Berserkers. Like Biling, Qianxia, Chenchong, Xikong, and also Bifeng from Eastern Wasteland's evil sect, along with Yi Wang from Justice Heaven Dao. These prodigies all descended to this place, and their trial would start once this thing appeared. In fact, they had been sent out to search for the sealed limbs of the second god of Berserkers in South Morning and Eastern Wastelands because their sects believed that perhaps one of the requirements for this thing was connected to the second god of Berserkers. This was a thing that was highly desired by all the immortals that descended on Eastern Wastelands, and it was also something that they had tried to reach with various methods for many years but never succeeded. This thing was connected to the first god of Berserkers. As the immortals that descended in the land of the Berserkers continuously occupied the Berserkers' territory, as they slowly unveiled the mysteries among the Berserkers that had made them respect this race so much in the past, and as they continued understanding and digging through their secrets, the immortals gradually learned of a secret. There was a tower in Eastern Wastelands, and it went by the name of Eastern Wastelands Tower. There were 99 layers to this tower, and whoever reached its final layer would receive the first god of Berserkers' epiphany towards world planes, and Plain Kalpa. Perhaps the epiphany towards world planes could not attract the attention of the few truly powerful warriors among the immortals, but it was different for Plain Kalpa. This was the source they dreamed of tapping, and if they could gain that epiphany, then it would serve as a great help towards the breakthrough in their level of cultivation. The first god of Berserkers' priceless treasure was left in that tower, along with his divine abilities and arts. All of these things were enough to tempt the immortals' hearts, and once they were certain of this, they desired the Eastern Wastelands Tower. More importantly, once they finished analyzing all the clues they had in their possession, they believed that there was a great secret hidden within the final layer of Eastern Wastelands Tower. This secret was related to Great Yu Baron Cauldron. It was the clue that would lead them to the strongest treasure among the Berserkers. This treasure was also related to an order that had come from Sacred Morning Dao World's Morning Dao planet and had spread through the entire sacred world in ancient times. All cultivators of Sacred Morning Dao World, you are to search for the Cauldron of Dao's roots, also known as Great Yu Baron Cauldron. I, Dao Chen Yi Bo, shall give the person who will find this cauldron my inheritance, and he shall also be the sovereign of Sacred Morning Dao World. Su Ming did not know about any of these, but it did not stop him from standing beside the window of the building and looking at the night as he waited for the scene spoken by that voice to appear. At that moment, he was not the only one acting this way. As one of the people who knew about this secret since he was the Grand Sect Elder of Evil Spirit Sect, Shendong too looked at the sky and waited. Let's hope it works this time. The mystery of the land of the Berserkers caused those truly powerful old monsters to be unable to have their true bodies descend in this place, and even Sir Ji can only have his clone down here to oversee things. I might have a chance to bring a great contribution to the sect. It was the same situation in Evil Dust Sect and Evil Lust Sect. The Grand Sect Elders in those two sects and all those who knew about this secret were all looking at the sky anxiously. Evil sects were not the only ones that acted this way. Di Qian's clone was standing in his courtyard silently within Great Leaf Immortal Sect as he looked at the sky. His face was cold and aloof, but a brilliant light could be seen shining within his eyes. Hidden Dragon Sect and Sky Mist Dao also had their own sects in Eastern Wastelands, and those who knew of the secret in those sects were all acting in the same manner. They were all looking at the sky in anxiety and anticipation, because they had already given up too much to make this Eastern Wastelands Tower appear. Chen Lan Meng and Chen Lan Yu's expressions were different as they stood beside Sky Mist's ancestor. They were both looking at the night silently. Chen Lan Yu's face was icy cold, like ice that would never melt. As for Chen Lan Meng, there was a constant, complicated look on her face. She seemed rather dejected, as if there were many things troubling her. At the instant dawn was over, suddenly, the expressions of all the people looking at the sky from all the different parts of Eastern Wastelands immediately changed. The long crack in the sky did not close up and vanish as it did 50 years ago. Instead, brilliant rays of light came from within. They instantly illuminated the entire sky above Eastern Wastelands, and not a single dark spot could be seen. Loud, booming sounds echoed in the air, and the crack in the sky swiftly widened. When it started spreading outwards, a gigantic object descended from inside. It was like there was a gigantic rock that caused the crack to be unable to withstand its size. Once it was torn apart, it crumbled, turning into a gigantic pit that was several hundreds of thousands of feet wide. Once that pit appeared, the gigantic object lowered itself, and it was the base of an immense tower that was octagonal in shape. With a loud bang, the entire land trembled, and the gigantic tower swiftly landed on the ground. There were originally a mountain underneath, but it was too feeble and could not withstand the force of the landing. It shattered into pieces, allowing the tower to stand erect on the ground in a stable manner. Its height was endless. The part that was revealed between the ground and the sky was just a part of it. The other half was still in that pit high above. This was a gigantic tower that could stun all those who saw it. The Eastern Wastelands Tower has appeared. From now onwards, I will give you 1,000 days to fight for the remaining 26 spots in the tower. 1,000 days later, you will all offer your sacrifices to make the blood-red light from the Eastern Wastelands Tower shine past 10 million lees. The 26 people who will offer the largest amount of immortal souls will earn the right to enter the tower. If the sacrifices offered are not enough to make the light from the Eastern Wastelands Tower shine past 10 million lees, the tower will not open. Within this tower lies my priceless treasure, my divine abilities, my arts, and my medicinal cores, and they can all be used by berserkers and immortals. It also contains my epiphany towards the world planes and the enlightenment of the plane Kalpa I gained after gathering all the understanding I have towards all worlds, as well as half of the cultivation I gained over half my life. Within this tower also lies the clue to Great U Baron Cauldron, the greatest treasure of the berserkers, which is also the treasure I had snatched from Dao Chen. I swear by my life that you will be able to find the Great Baron Cauldron with this clue. Su Ming's heart trembled. As he looked at the sky, that unique voice rang in his ears once again. There was arrogance in that voice, along with a hint of wildness. The first god of berserkers, Xianxia. What a vicious man! Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. Chapter 620. Confidence. That first god of berserkers was indeed vicious. Eastern Wastelands Tower's appearance, the 99 layers, and the priceless treasure at the top were enough to tempt all immortals and berserkers. The 26 slots to the tower could incite a bloody massacre, and to prevent any sort of situation that was out of the god of berserkers' control, such as these 26 people working together to determine the ranks on their own in secret, the god of berserkers had added that the blood-colored light must span a distance of 10 million lees. Because of that, what he would bring would no longer be just a bloody massacre, but genocide. If too little immortal blood was spilled, no one would be able to step into Eastern Wastelands Tower. If they did not have the right to enter the tower, then they would be unable to receive the great serendipity. That was why Su Ming had sensed Xianxia's viciousness when he heard his voice reverberated in the air. Similarly, it would make all the immortals who heard it desire that treasure deeply, but at the same time, they would also feel a deep chill run through their bodies. It was not as if no one had ever wondered whether those treasures truly existed in Eastern Wastelands Tower, but most of the people who were skilled in divination had predicted this to be true after all the descended immortals from the sects came to them. With Xianxia's status as the first god of berserkers and his level of cultivation, he would definitely not lie about this. This was something that the immortals had to admit, even though they harbored a deep grudge towards him. Su Ming averted his gaze from the dark sky and closed his eyes. The first god of berserkers' Eastern Wastelands Tower is not a trap but a blatant attack. Di Qian's clone and evil sex Ji and will definitely be able to tell that this is a plan to force them to kill each other. They will need a sufficient amount of immortal souls, and if any berserker will want to obtain this right, they will also have to fight for it with everything they have. It would have been better if there was just one person fighting for it, but there are plenty of tribes and even clans like Freezing Sky Clan in the land of berserkers. These clans will be even crazier over the first god of berserkers' legacy. What a plan! Not only did he just make the immortals fight among themselves, he also made the berserkers rise to fight and kill those immortals so that they could gain a chance to obtain a great serendipity. In fact, there will be situations where people will band together. During these 1,000 days, the Eastern Wastelands will be drenched in blood. Su Ming opened his eyes, and a brilliant glint appeared in his eyes. Chaos is about to arrive. Su Ming waved his arm and took a few steps backwards before he sitting down cross-legged on the ground. He could feel danger in the air, and he needed to recover his cultivation base as quickly as possible, for only then could he obtain his place in the soon-to-be very chaotic Eastern Wastelands. 26 slots. There should be 27, but the others don't know about my slot. Bao Qiu had already cleared her heart, as she remained by his side. When she looked at him, there was respect and a hint of something else in her gaze. Master, don't worry. I won't tell anyone about what happened today. If you have nothing else to ask of me, then I will take my leave. My sect members will be coming continuously to learn the reason why that mountain descended just now. Bao Qiu bent her body slightly in a bow towards Su Ming. With her beautiful head lowered, she walked backwards to leave the first floor of the building so that she could return to the ground floor. Just as she was about to leave, Su Ming's gaze landed on her, and despite him seeing her beautiful face and alluring body, his face was as calm as still water. My blood helped you avoid the Berserker's disaster. What are your thoughts on this? Bao Qiu froze and a light shudder ran through her body. She lifted her head and looked at Su Ming. There was a slight hint of pity, confusion, and sentiment on her face. All these expressions fused together into an extremely complicated look on her countenance. I thought of nothing. Bao Qiu dipped her head down, as if she did not dare to look him into eyes as she spoke softly. Have you ever met Destiny before? Su Ming suddenly asked, looking straight at the young woman. Once Bao Qiu heard the word destiny, she shuddered again, and she instinctively took a few steps back. Her face instantly turned pale. I've never seen him, never heard about him. Master, please don't force me to say anything about destiny. Every immortal who descends to the land of berserkers has to swear an oath, and if we say anything about destiny, we will be punished. We will also get our families in the land of immortals in trouble. Bao Qiu lifted her head and looked at Su Ming with a plea for mercy in her eyes. He remained silent for a moment. Fatigue appeared on his face and he closed his eyes, no longer interrogating her about this matter. What would he be able to do if he learned about destiny, anyway? What could he do even after proving his own guesses correct? He would still be in Yin Death region, and he would still not know where his memories lay. He would still not know where the girl who had called him her big brother was. In the end, I still need to be the one who tears through this layer of mystery. One of these days, I will break this sky and walk out of this world. That day is already not too far away. At the instant Su Ming closed his eyes, he said these words to himself quietly. Bao Qiu left. After the Berserker's disaster, Evil Spirit Sect returned to its usual activities. Quite a large number of sect members came to visit Bao Qiu and asked about the mountain descending for her. None of these people noticed Su Ming's presence, not even the Grand Sect Elder Shandong. If Su Ming wanted to hide himself from him, it would be very difficult for the man to find him within a short period of time. All the immortal sects in Eastern Wastelands might seem as if they were in peace after the Berserker's disaster, for they acted as if it had never happened, but the gigantic pit in the sky, the flattened mountain range, and the tall Eastern Wastelands tower at the center of the continent were a stark reminder that all of it had indeed happened. Perhaps some people had investigated the tower in secret. Su Ming did not know what results they had obtained, but he did discover some minor changes within Evil Spirit Sect after a month had passed since the Berserker's disaster. A large number of people in isolation had chosen to egress. Occasionally, mighty waves of power would appear on the mountain. None of the outer sect disciples dared to leave the mountain, and a large number of those who had left for training earlier were swiftly returning to their sect every single day, as if they had been summoned back. A monstrously huge mountain protection rune gradually enveloped Evil Spirit Mountain. At the same time it sealed off the mountain, a large amount of power of the world was sucked into the place, causing the place to look as if fog had surrounded it. In fact, some of the outer sect disciples who had been driven to the foot of the mountain as punishment had been summoned back. They returned to their original positions and started making preparations in secret. A tense atmosphere surrounded the entire Evil Spirit Sect. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with it. These people were preparing for war. Bao Qiu would deliver medicinal cores every single day to him, and the quality of those cores was becoming better. From the bits and pieces of the things she told him when she came, Su Ming knew clearly that what he had sensed was not incorrect. They were indeed preparing for war. All of this was due to an order sent by Evil Immortal Sect 3 days after the Berserker's disaster. That order was filled with a clear, bloodthirsty air, and there were only 2 sentences contained within it. Prepare for war. Get ready to fight. During that month, the recovery of Su Ming's cultivation base had sped up due to the medicinal cause. By his calculations, if this continued, then with just another month, 9/10 of his cultivation base would have recovered, and half a year later, he would be back at his full power. He then would reach a pinnacle of strength he had never achieved before. At that time, he would be able to attempt breaking through into the Berserker Soul realm. If he succeeded, then he would be able to overlook all those who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul realm. This was his confidence. Half a year is a little too long. It would have been fine if everything was going on as usual, but now, there's a 1,000 days limit set for the Eastern Wastelands Tower, and because of that, I need to reach the Berserker Soul realm as soon as possible. Looks like I'll have to go out and test the secret art I inherited from Hong Luo. Fortunately, my cultivation base is mostly recovered and I will be able to cast it somewhat. There might be some drawbacks, but I'll have to do this. Eastern Wastelands Tower will not activate if that blood-colored light doesn't reach 10 million Lis, but judging from the first god of Berserker's words, this restriction is set for the 26 slots. He didn't mention me. If I have the chance, I should go and check whether it restriction on me as well. If I don't. Su Ming's eyes sparkled, and he continued immersing himself in his training. In the blink of an eye, another half a month went by. On this day during noon, Su Ming's eyes flew open while he was seated. A brilliant flash shone briefly in his eyes and he lifted his head. With a gaze as if he could see through walls, he looked at the sky beyond the building. 3 long arcs were charging towards the mountain protection rune around Evil Spirit Sect. They traveled side by side and looked as if they were shooting stars that were surrounded by black fog. As piercing whistles rang in the air, the 3 long arcs closed in on the mountain protection rune, and with a flash of black, they shot through and appeared within Evil Spirit Sect. Their appearance immediately caught all the people's attention, who fixed their gazes on the trio. By the orders of Sir Jian, Shundong of Evil Spirit Sect come forth and receive the declaration. Almost at the moment those words left their mouths, an eerie voice traveled forth from the black smoke rising into the sky in Evil Spirit Mountain. I, Shundong, greet the 3 evil sect messengers. The trio immediately wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed towards the black smoke, from which came Shundong's voice. The person in the lead brought out a jade slip, and once he crushed it, an illusionary shadow immediately appeared before him as the air distorted. The shadow's face could not be seen clearly, and only a black robe could be glimpsed on his body, which also covered his head and face. A cold and sinister presence immediately spread out, instantly enveloping the whole Evil Spirit Sect, which caused all the people's hearts to tremble. They lowered their heads and prostrated themselves on the ground in worship. As that cold presence filled the air, the sky, too, immediately darkened, as if a layer of fog had covered it so that the people could not see it clearly. Shundong. A deep voice traveled out from that shadow. There was not a hint of emotion that could be detected from those words, and all those who heard them felt a chill filling their bodies. Bring the Evil Spirit Sect and trample Thousand River Valley. Your goal is one of the branches of Hidden Dragon Sect located there. You have 10 days, and your mission is to kill all of them. Set up a line of defense there, and let it become one of the bases for us Evil Sect to invade all the other immortal sects here. A middle-aged man dressed in a blue robe walked out from the black smoke at that moment. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed respectfully towards the shadow. I understand. The shadow no longer spoke, but instead slowly faded away. The 3 evil sect messengers wrapped their fists towards Shundong in silence. 2 of them turned around and transformed into long arcs that shot through the mountain protection rune, speeding away. The last person remained on the spot after giving Shundong a wrapped fist as a salute. He did not say a word.